Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hello, thank you for being here, wonderful friends. I hope this finds you in good health and secure. We are continuing with the a parable chapter of the Lotus Sutra in the BDK translation. Just a couple of notes I want to make before we dive in. I have decided that rather than to continue to update and revise the Buddhism reference manual, I want to leave it as it is. It's a good compendium of many, many core terms that we use all the time. But as more terms come up, like save and I think liberation or liberate is in there already, I'll have to check. But as more and more terms, and maybe I'll allow myself to dig into maybe less common terms, but they may be helpful in our understanding of Buddhism. I will do a volume 2. So this volume, as it is in ebook or print status, it'll stay as it is unless there's some heinous typo in there I need to repair. But new words, new terms, new analogies, that kind of thing, they will go into a volume 2. So it occurred to me that if I'm constantly updating this book, you have little incentive to get it because he's just going to revise it. So it is solid. All right. I also, one of you was asking me about which translations of the Lotus Sutra would be helpful for study. And as you know, I've talked about this before, in my Lotus Lectures playlist, I have moved around between 5 different translations that I have, including a very old one from 1884 of H. Kern, which I enjoy for my own reasons, and I've talked about those before. But in that regard, there's a couple of new books and an older book, another older book. You know, one of my favorite modern scholars today is Jacqueline Stone, and she works with other scholars and books that I've read that I've discussed a little bit as information for you guys, but I haven't done any videos on them. Well, that's not true. I've done some on the Nichiren writings of Jacqueline Stone's. Anyway, she and other scholars of her association have called out that the Leon Hurwitz translation, modern translation of the Lotus Sutra, is the closest that they have found to the Chinese translation of Kumarajiva. So I thought, well, you know, I've read it online, I've read pieces of it, so I went ahead and purchased a copy, and I'm thinking I'll do another series on the Leon Hurwitz Lotus Sutra. But most exciting to me was when I heard that what I started practicing with was Kosekai publishing of the Threefold Lotus Sutra. And that's where I got the name for this Sangha. I think it's important to read the Immeasurable Meanings Sutra as well as the 28 chapters of the Lotus Sutra and the closing meditation on Bodhisattva Universal Virtue as the closing chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And that's, in fact, the Lotus Lectures playlist is mostly based on that book with, as I said, translations from other Lotus Sutra translations for different chapters that I interspersed in there. Well, the core writer of that edition, not too long ago, wrote a book called Buddhism for Today, The Essential Wisdom of the Threefold Lotus Sutra by Nikyo Niwano. But what intrigued me about this translation, again, it's the threefold, so it has it all. But I see that he adopted, and he did this book specifically to address our modern scholarship language And come to find out, I just skimmed through a couple of pages, and he made a lot of the same word distinctions, word changes that I have. Well, I was pointing out in the last video that I keep running into this word save. It should say liberated, right? And lo and behold, that's what he has in there, liberated instead of the word saved. And I thought, how validating and how wonderful that modern scholarship is catching up, right? So I thought, well, that might be an interesting series too of somebody else's effort to clear this stuff up, right? So anyway, it looks like I'll be talking about the Lotus Sutra for a little while. So that's all I have to report. This book remaining solid as it is, and a volume 2 in the works. Now that I've said all of that, the Tathagata appears in the triple world, which is like a decaying old house on fire. To rescue sentient beings, there it is again, rescue. To liberate sentient beings from the fire of birth, old age, illness, and death, anxiety, sorrow, suffering, distress, delusion, blindness, and the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, or the world of anger, and ignorance, sometimes translated as stupidity. But there's quite a difference between ignorance and stupidity, yeah? Ignorance being you just don't know, and that's okay, right? We aren't born ready-made with all knowledge. Although Buddha would disagree, right? Because Buddhaness is innate. But that just means we have the capacity. Whether or not we explore it, use it, develop it, well, that's samsara, right? That dividing line, that head-turning thing that I was talking about in the last video. That's a good little analogy, I think. So if you haven't seen the last video, please go ahead and watch that. All right, thus, he leads and inspires sentient beings and causes them to attain highest complete enlightenment. And you're going to hear that a lot in the Lotus Sutra, because this is the ultimate method, teaching of the method for anyone, whatever their mental state, to open their Gohonzon mind, right, their Buddha eye, to experience enlightenment. Awaken it. It's always been there. Hello, get it out of its sleep. Let's rule our lives with that perspective, that wonderful view of potential in our lives, yeah? The Tathagata sees all sentient beings burning in the fire of birth, old age, illness, and death, anxiety, sorrow, suffering, and distress because of the desires of the 5 senses, the skandhas, yeah? And the desire for monetary profit. They also experience various kinds of suffering. Consider that. 3,000 years ago, or almost 3,000 years ago, money. It's amazing, huh? Because of their attachment and pursuits, they experience various kinds of suffering in the present. And in the future, they will suffer in the states of existence of hell, animals, and hungry ghosts, pretas. If they are born in the heavens or in the human world, they will experience a variety of sorrows, such as suffering from poverty and destitution, separation from loved ones, or suffering from encounters with those they dislike. Well, that's the world today, isn't it? It always has been this way. Because, as I said in the analogy, the way we locate and define ourselves is by the past. And we have little, if any, information or hope, really, because we can't see into the future. Well, we're not looking that way. If we look that way, suddenly opportunities abound. And whatever obstacles we might face are suddenly easier to, or much easier, to simply step around, to take actions that avoid them altogether. But when you're walking with your head backwards, you run into everything, right? And you only know what you ran into once it's in your past. Can't change that, right? So, although sentient beings are immersed in such sorrows, they rejoice and play. You still find time to experience joy and play. Just how much more would it be? They are not aware, shocked, startled, or disgusted, nor do they seek release, because they don't know it's even available. He's talking about ignorance, people who don't know, who aren't studying Buddhism. Running around in the burning house of the triple world, they experience great suffering, and yet they do not realize it. Right? He's talking about the analogy we spoke of in the last video, yeah? O Shariputra, seeing these things, the Buddha thought, which is interesting, that we use these kinds of illustrations, or he uses these kinds of illustrations, because the Buddha is thought. But since I am the father of sentient beings, you see this paternal compassion? Since I am the father of sentient beings, I must rid them of their immeasurable suffering and distress, even though they're not aware of their immeasurable suffering and distress. They just think that's the way it is, right? In modern talk, I need to give them a new normal, right? I will cause them to rejoice through the immeasurable and limitless pleasure of the Buddha wisdom. Once again, turning their mind toward this moment into the future with all of its potential. See, the past is locked down, the future wide open. Seems obvious when we talk about it, but imagine being stuck, probably don't have to imagine very hard, in that samsaric trap, unaware that released from that samsaric trap, limitless potential, as he says, immeasurable and limitless pleasure of the Buddha wisdom. O Shariputra, the Tathagata further thought, if I proclaim the Tathagata's wisdom, insight, power, and fearlessness to sentient beings, with my transcendental powers, and the power of my wisdom alone, without using skillful means, it will be impossible to liberate them. They'll just want what I have. They'll give me that, right? They won't get that that's their potential. Why is this, he says? Because these sentient beings have not escaped from birth, old age, illness, and death, anxiety, sorrows, suffering, and desires, and are being burned in the blazing house of the triple world. They don't understand that it's their option. They can walk out of this burning house. They just want to be rescued. How would they be able to understand the Buddha's wisdom? They wouldn't understand it, right? They'd snap their finger. Give me. Well, that's just the lower worlds all over again. O Shariputra, although that affluent man had physical strength, he did not use it. He only earnestly employed skillful means to save his children from the disaster of the burning house. And later he gave them, each of them, a large cart decorated with precious treasures. The Tathagata is exactly like this. And when he says Tathagata, he's talking about the nature of Buddhaness, right? You notice these different terms throughout his discussion because it has a different meaning. Your Tathagata-ness does the same. He's really trying to unglue people, his students, from thinking that he, personally, man, is the source. It's the Tathagata-ness, the Buddhaness, that is the source. But he's still having a hard time getting that message through, yeah? Although the Tathagata has power and fearlessness, he does not use them, but liberates sentient beings from the burning house of the triple world only through wisdom and skillful means. So that little thing he did earlier in the skillful means chapter, where he shone a ray of light from the tuft of hair between his brows, that was just an example to wake these people up in his assembly, students of his, not just general population, but just, there were laymen and laywomen, but they're all students of Buddhism. So he gave them a clue. This is what this teaching is going to be about, this ultimate teachings. So he aroused them all. But now he's quickly reminding them that if I just give you that, you won't respect it, you won't use it, you won't understand it. You need to achieve it for yourself. This is Buddhism, folks. Yeah? That's why when we get a mandala of Gohonzon, we confer it on ourselves. No authority. You are the authority of everything. I mean, people are fond of saying, don't tell me what to do. Well, tell yourself what to do then. Only through wisdom and skillful means, teaching the three vehicles to the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and the Buddhas, saying, do not take pleasure in living in this burning house of the triple world. And do not thirst after inferior objects, sounds, smells, flavors, and tangibles. Yeah, he's talking about the clinging and craving of the skandhas. If you're attached to these objects and have desires, then you will be burned, just like the children in the burning house, right? All they want is to play another round of Jenga or whatever it is. I got to finish my game on my Game Boy, my console, my whatever. Leave the triple world in haste. Don't wait. And you will obtain the three vehicles, the vehicles for the Sravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and Buddhas. I definitely guarantee this to you. In the end, it will come true. You should be diligent and persistent. It doesn't just happen like snapping a finger. You actually have to work at it. You have to be persistent. You have to be diligent. This is why conviction, practice, study, to help us gain confidence so that we stay resolved, committed, with conviction, right? That's why I created this resource. The Tathagata attracts sentient beings through this skillful means, saying further, you should know that the noble ones praise the teachings of these three vehicles that are self-directed, unrestricted, and independent. Are we not an independent Lotus Sutra Buddhist Sangha? Following the scholarship from Bodhisattva Nichiren all the way back to Shakyamuni himself. When they ride in them, sentient beings will enjoy faculties free from corruption and also powers, paths to enlightenment, meditation, liberation, and concentration. and they themselves will attain immeasurable ease and pleasure. Remember, our samsaric condition is dis-ease. Enlightenment, awakening is ease, right? O Shariputra, those beings wise in nature, who accept the Dharma from the Buddha Bhagavat, who are diligent, persistent, and wish to escape from the triple world quickly, and who are seeking nirvana, liberation, are all practicing the Sravaka vehicle. In other words, they hear this teaching. They really hear it. They are like those children who left the burning house seeking the cart yoked to a sheep. Oh, but they were still driven by desire, weren't they? They listened, but only to their liking. That's an interesting point. Those beings who accept the Dharma of the Buddha Bhagavat, who are diligent and persevere in seeking the wisdom of the self-generated one, and enjoy tranquility for themselves, who profoundly know the causes and reasons for existence, are all practicing the Pratyekabuddha vehicle. That word Pratyekabuddha, I don't know if I should do this. I've always read it as practically a Buddha. That's what it sounds like, right? Pratyekabuddha. Maybe that'll go in volume 2. They are just like those children who left the burning house seeking the cart yoked to a deer. In other words, a little more value proposition, because they're studying a little more deeply on how to actually actualize. And this is the key part of this. I always say it. This is an independent practice, not just as a Sangha, but individually. You. This is your practice, not mine. It is also my practice as we interact. That's Sangha. But your enlightenment comes from your investigation, dedication, path. In other words, I can't give it to you, nor can even a manifest Buddha, because the manifest Buddha is only a manifest Buddha if you manifest it. That's what he's saying here. Those beings who accept the Dharma of the Buddha Bhagavat, who are diligent and persevere in seeking the wisdom of the omniscient one, or the omniscience for oneself, the wisdom of the Buddha, the wisdom of the self-generated one. I say it again, he says it again, self-generated one. We've talked about the term, and it's in the book, the Buddhism reference book, the thus come one. The three bodies of Buddha integrated into one. Buddhaness, yeah. The wisdom acquired without a teacher. I'm going to read that again because that's a very powerful statement, and it's one of the statements that is the foundation for this resource and that drives me to do this every day. Those beings who accept the Dharma of the Buddha Bhagavat, who are diligent and persevere in seeking the wisdom of the omniscient one, the wisdom of the Buddha, the wisdom of the self-generated one, the wisdom acquired without a teacher, the wisdom and insight, powers and fearlessness of the Tathagata, who are compassionate but immeasurable sentient beings at ease, benefit devas and humans, and liberate all beings, are all practicing the Mahayana. Bodhisattvas are called Mahasattvas, or great beings, because they seek this vehicle. They are just like those children who left the burning house seeking the cart yoked to an ox, the most valuable. So once again, when he says acquired without a teacher, this is something that I've defined several times in this resource. The teacher that he's talking about is someone who teaches. It's an other. But since this is a self-generated one, the teacher is actually you teaching yourself. We call it learning. But learning only occurs through your own insights. Whatever a teacher, another being, blah, 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 it's useless unless in your mind it sparks in one of your insights to grapple with an offered concept, as I'm doing now with you, so that you hear it, inculcate it, chew it up, swallow it, and do something with it. Now it's yours. You're doing the teaching. So you don't need a teacher. It's confusing. That's the limitation of language. But this is what this translation is trying to say here. All right. O Shariputra, that affluent man saw his children leave the burning house safely and arrive at a safe place. They're practicing correctly. Oh my goodness. How amazing. Yeah. Knowing that he had immeasurable wealth, he gave a large cart equally to each child. In other words, the three vehicles, right? The sheep, the deer, the ox. Ultimately, they're all the ultimate vehicle. Do you see where this is going? The Tathagata is exactly like this. As the father of all sentient beings, he sees that immeasurable thousands of kotis of sentient beings liberate themselves from the danger, suffering, and fears of the triple world through the gates of the Buddha's teachings and attain the pleasure of nirvana. Then the Tathagata thought, because I possess the treasure house of the Dharma of all the Buddhas, which contains immeasurable, limitless wisdom, power, and fearlessness, and because all sentient beings are my children, I will give them equally the Mahayana, the full, perfect, complete enlightenment. I will not allow anyone to attain nirvana merely for himself. In other words, still attached to the idea of a samsaric identity, but will cause everyone to attain it through the Tathagata's nirvana, the full enlightenment. I will give sentient beings who have escaped from the triple world all the toys of the Buddha's meditations and liberations, which are of one character and one kind, are praised by the noble ones, and which produce pure and supreme pleasure. O Shariputra, at first that affluent man attracted his children with 3 kinds of carts, then later gave them only the safest and best large ox cart, adorned with jewels. Moreover, that affluent man was never accused of telling a lie. The Tathagata is exactly like this. He tells no lies. Oh, but you said I was going to get a sheep-drawn cart. Yeah, so now you have an ox-drawn cart. Isn't that more? Isn't that better? But you said, really? You're calling me out as a liar now because I gave you more than I teased you out of the burning building with? Would you do that? That would be pretty short-sighted, yeah? In the beginning, the Tathagata teaches the 3 vehicles in order to lead sentient beings to their capacity, right? And later he saves them through only the Mahayana. Why is this? Because the Tathagata possesses the treasure house of the Dharma, which contains immeasurable wisdom, power, and fearlessness. And although he is able to give the teaching of the Mahayana to all sentient beings, not all of them can accept it. Depends on where they are in their capacity to grasp it, yeah? O Shariputra, you should know that the Buddhas, with the power of skillful means, teach the single Buddha vehicle, dividing and teaching it as 3. Then the Buddha, wanting to elaborate on the meaning of this again, spoke these verses. And so this is the memorization portion of the sermon, right? Where are we time-wise? Well, we're right at 30 minutes. So I think I will keep this verse section. Yeah, it's pretty long. I'll keep it for the next video. Yeah, it is quite lengthy. But I look forward to it because often, if you've noticed, in the verse section, he's actually much more specific. And that will take us out of the chapter. So, as no particular surprise, the fourth chapter, the next one, will be willing acceptance. Right? All right. So thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope you're getting some of your own insights as we continue here. And if you have any particular thoughts, I mean, I don't know everything about these other Lotus Sutra translations. This adds 2 or 3. I've got a lot of Lotus Sutra translations. I think it would be interesting to just do a playlist on each of these, just to afford you the opportunity to hear the slightly different, the language shifts. The message should be exactly the same, right? If we don't allow certain charismatic religious terms to get in our way, right? I'm really looking forward to read the Buddhism for Today. I don't know how, there undoubtedly will I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I may call some things out in it. You know how I am. I want it to be right. So, again, thank you. Please take care of your health. Be kind to yourself. Yeah. And just got another wonderful, generous donation from one of you. I hesitate to call out names because people feel differently about that. But patrons, you guys are, I'm so grateful for your support. And the Sangha is grateful because it helps me be able to put out books and correct them and keep this resource as clear and respectful and helpful as possible, yeah? So, for your support, whether it's through Patreon as direct cash donations or through PayPal, some of you choose to go that way. They both end up going through PayPal. Or if you're buying an ebook or a print book or a mandala, all of it, from, a few dimes to many dollars, it all is a cause, a bodhisattva cause, to spread this teaching, to propagate the scholarship of Buddhism, yeah? So, bodhisattvas we are. Bodhisattvas of the earth, actually. So, again, all my gratitude. And I will see you in the next video. We'll continue with the BDK translation of the Lotus Sutra. Bye for now.